share about your particular, anything that you share about your particular company that you don't want in the recording, just flag it with me. We can delete it afterwards as well. Okay. Awesome. So please do drop comments in the window at any time in the chat window. I'll keep that open. If there's anything I say that doesn't make sense, or like a typical VC, I'm using too much vernacular that we've just made up to make ourselves feel important, like challenge all of that, throw it out there. Any personal experiences, throw that out as well. Drop your own reflections in the chat window also as we go. It's good for others to obviously get that peer-to-peer learning. So just quickly for context, we're a venture capital firm. We're entirely B2B focused, typically investing post-seed stage to Series A into Australian, New Zealand companies that are scaling to the UK or US. But beyond that, we also run these programs like our US and UK market expansion missions, our new Global Growth Accelerator in Queensland, which is open for applications right now. But basically workshops like this as well to help more Aussie companies go global. Now, in the context of this particular workshop, we're talking about go to market. So maybe just in the chat window with a hands up gesture or on the screen with a hands up gesture. Appreciate you sharing vulnerably if you experience any of these pain points in your go to market. So first of all, you're getting really good product feedback. People love what the product does, the bells and whistles, but it's not converting into sales. Quick show of hands, who experiences that pain point? Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Dave. Lawrence. You might also experience this pain point where you're very good at selling to those already existing relationships that you have, or where you've already got networks, but you struggle to convert the cold leads and the unknown customers. Anyone feel that pain point? Thanks, Joe. Lots of hands up. You find yourself competing on price. So you're getting feedback and pushback from the market. You're too expensive. You're losing contracts to others, and you're being seen essentially as a commoditized product. Anyone feel that pain point? I saw your head nodding there, Lee. Hopefully it wasn't me sending you to sleep. Losing deals to competitors, even though they have shittier products. I think every single technical founder feels this pain, but my product's better. Why aren't I winning the customers? Another thing we often see when go-to-market isn't functioning is you tend to hire salespeople and very quickly fire them. And you go through this revolving door of putting on a new head of country and a new market or a new head of sales, only to have this belief that they couldn't sell it. Yeah, that's written in the chat there. Like, clients do not recognize the value. Price is always too expensive for them. Absolutely. I think also for us technical founders, we kind of fixate on the next version of the product will solve this. If I just get these features out, it'll solve this. One of the challenges of operating in a small market like Australia is we have such a limited pool of customers. They all want something slightly different, and we end up building the Titanic to try and solve all of their problems. Whereas in big markets, you can actually have a really shitty product and still end up building a great business just because of the volume. And then the last one here that we often see as a pain point is poor capital efficiency. So you're spending a lot of money to acquire customers, to service customers, constantly redeveloping the program with the product with new features. So if you feel any of these pain points, then you're in the right spot. These are very common. In terms of why these types of problems occur, just to run through what we see, one is often a lack of a clear strategy. So the entrepreneurial energy, we're driven by the latest opportunity and running to the next shiny object. If you haven't already built your business strategy, we really love the strategy choice cascade model. I think it was by Rogers. Like, definitely check that out. Highly recommend you start there. Another one is you don't have a really tightly defined ideal customer profile, or maybe you've got many, more than one. Another common problem we see is an unclear problem statement, or that you're trying to solve too many problems at once. Maybe the problem is clear, but it's just not a big enough pain point that anyone cares enough to actually take action about it. And this is one we often see as well. It's like, yes, there's a problem. You go out and do your initial customer discovery, absolutely a problem. Market wants your solution to that problem, but there's the unit economics of it just don't make sense. Language is too complex, so if you confuse, you lose. Your messaging just doesn't get cut through. Again, particularly for technical founders, we all love our product so much, we want to explain every single part of it, and that the ultimate message gets lost. And one of the last two, lack of a systemic process for generating interest at top of funnel and converting that through to sales at the bottom. So I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chats around all of this, like, things like, can't we just build this ourselves? Clients themselves not understanding the problem. Absolutely agree with that one. And the last one is just abdication rather than effectively leading a team through delegation. Sometimes we just look at someone else solving the sales problem for us. So if you're not comfortable selling, there can be this tendency to go and hire a salesperson or put on a new country manager in a new market because you don't want to be there. But if not done correctly, it ends up abdication of responsibility rather than true delegation. So again, if you're feeling these pain points, you're not alone. We all make them. It's common pain points in an early stage company. So we do have one of Don's memes at this point. One of the challenges we see for early stage companies is we tend to go and hire a lot of salespeople, particularly after we've raised capital, but we do that before having built the sales engine, where we haven't actually built a systemic process to generate interest at the top of funnel and then drive conversion. And that's where we're going to focus today. So mastering your sales flywheel, I know this sounds bleeding obvious, we all get it, but it's the how. But if you're operating in a niche market where there's a big pain point, doesn't have to be a big market, I'll talk about that in a moment, but you're in a niche market, a clear pain point, your messaging to market fit is on point, so you're not confusing the market with your messaging. You've got a system for generating leads and conversion that is also fit for the product and market, then you should end up with this flywheel. Obviously, we all know what needs to be done. It's just the bloody question of how. The one thing I want you to start thinking about, though, is where on this sort of 4-quadrant map do you fit? So at the top, we have the vertical axis, we have whether you are a direct solution or an indirect solution. So does your solution provide a direct benefit to the end user or the customer, or an indirect solution? Is it a tangible outcome or an intangible outcome? CJ, I'm just going to put you on mute. Sorry, buddy. Are you an intangible outcome or a tangible outcome? Is the need for your product or service accepted, or is the need not understood? Sometimes we have a pain point, but we don't actually understand a need to solve it. And do they really care, or is it just look, that's a problem, but I really don't care. I get paid anyway. So just on that vertical axis, just take a moment to reflect as the first activity where you sit vertically. And if there's any questions at this point, like what do we mean by direct solution versus indirect, tangible versus intangible? And just a quick show of hands with the gesture or physical hand, just everyone clear where they are on the mud map on the vertical axis? Yep. Great. Let's go. Was the question, would you differentiate can do nothing versus believe they can do nothing? Very good point. So they believe they can do nothing. Yeah, there's a whole topic we could talk about there, but it's their belief. I apologize if you can hear the birds in the background as well. I'm working from my deck today and the birds are flocking around. Now shifting to the horizontal axis, on the left we have if the customer can do nothing or just keep doing the same, versus on the right, they can't do nothing. They have to take action. On the left, we have there's many alternatives. Even if you believe you are different, there's still many alternatives for them, including taking no action. Over on the right, very few alternatives. On the left, is it relationship driven? So your relationship with the customers, is that relationship driven or is it non-relationship driven? Now, where we find the easiest products and services take to market is when you're in that top right quadrant. So you'll see up there, we've got unicorns, we've got things like RegTech. Down in the bottom left, you're pushing a rock uphill, and as you can see our very own logo at Tribe right there Like we're a venture capital firm. Do investors need to do anything? No, not particularly. Do they have many alternatives? Absolutely. Is it relationship driven? Absolutely. While it is a direct solution, it's also a very long time frame for capital returns. Yeah, it's a tangible outcome, but is the need for venture capital accepted as part of a portfolio? Arguably at the moment, maybe not. Do they care or not care? Right now, probably don't really care about about the asset class. So the point of this one is just map yourself. And if anyone would like to share where they are on the map. This is normally the point where Don says that we operate on a democracy model, which is we lead with democracy. We ask for volunteers, and then if no one volunteers, we go to dictatorship.
So, Aaron, we've got a governance software for schools, and so we've got a pretty direct solution with a tangible outcome. So we'd be up the top. But what we're finding is that it's more relationship driven than we would like, and the many alternatives probably are more like they can do it on a spreadsheet. What we're trying to do is bring structure to governance that typically sits on spreadsheets and SharePoint files. So we'd be top left.
Yep.
Or thereabouts.
Yep.
In fact, we're pretty much exactly the same top left with exactly the same issue, spreadsheets that people can do on their own in their own organization.
Yep.
Yep. If any of you know Vu Tran, founder of Go One and many other things, he still practices as a GP 1 day a week, and he references how many times he gets pitched software to replace the fax machine in a medical practice office. And he's like, is it really a problem for me? I actually like the 5 minutes it takes me to get up, go to the fax machine, send a fax. I know it works. I know it gets through the other end. I go back and sit down. So again, we can have solutions that, like an Excel spreadsheet, and they might be inefficient. They might have all these other issues, but does it solve the fundamental problem for the customer? And how do we articulate that differentiated value prop? Just picking up some of the comments. So some are close to center, some are up and to the right. Yeah, awesome. So again, it's just to give you a bit of clarity. And then the question becomes, okay, what do I do with that information? So if I am bottom left, can I shift myself somewhere else? Maybe this is a reflection on that will inform you go to market, but it's also possibly a question mark for the business itself. It's understanding if you are relationship driven, that's important information for when we start getting into the go to market. Because if you're relationship driven, it's very hard to build a PLG go to market model. Okay, so a lot more comments coming through. Yeah, trend spec. So it's top right, but pulled back to the left as it is also relationship based, small industry. Yep. Awesome. Hopefully this first part is beneficial. We'll kick on into kind of some of our thinking and then our go-to-market model. So for us, we're very fixated on this word focus, the big F word for founders. We believe in the 5 or 6 ones, which is solve one problem with one solution, like one product code, one SKU for one specific customer segment in one market, ideally through one channel for your first 1 million in revenue. Now, yes, there's so many biases in that, like depending on your ACV, what is $1 million? It might be one contract, it might be 100,000. But the point is, the riches are in the niches. If you niche, you're more likely to penetrate, particularly in a big market. But anytime you add an and or an or to what you're doing or who you're doing it for or how you're reaching them, you are essentially doubling the workload. And so best to stay hyper-focused. You just see it as a pattern of success recognition. One question that often comes up is, well, how big should my market be? And obviously, you probably all appreciate getting conflicting advice from investors. Your TAM's too small, your TAM's too big. We're more of the view that monopolize a small market and then tilt into another. And we take that word tilt from Edward Keelan, who's a partner at Octopus Ventures over in the UK. That QR code on the screen, I'll share the link after with the recording, but it's just to his blog post where he talks about this concept of tackling a small niche market and then tilting into another. And understanding that, yes, you have so many opportunities for your market, but the ability to focus on one initially, win that market, and then tilt into another rather than trying to be all things for all people. So I'll just drop that there as a resource. Sweet. We're going to kick off into our canvas now, which is more of the workshopy part. But before we do, any comments, reflections, feelings, needs for an emotional support puppy? No, we're all good. Awesome. So, like many of you would appreciate, if any of you watch Silicon Valley on HBO, like it's a comedy series, but it's also a documentary about the game we play. You would know that every VC needs their own conjoined circles of success or their own canvas or their own whatever. So this is ours. We made up a go-to-market canvas because we just see so many founders confusing strategy of go-to-market with the operational funnel and then with the metrics capture. And then understanding how do you actually measure where things are broken, create a feedback loop, and hold your team accountable. And so, hats off to Jack on the team for informing a lot of this when we were early days at Tribe. And to be honest, this is how we would love to be pitched by founders. If founders sent us their canvas, it would make us be able to understand their business in one page. So I'm going to step through it, appreciating that for many of you, this might be, parts of this will be quite simple, but it's like I said at the start, it's all about the what. So it's actually about what goes into these fields and do you actually execute on it. So this is our canvas, just very high level to start with. And you should all have the download link in the comments that Mark dropped earlier. So at the very top, we start with some strategy components. So what is the problem you're solving? Who are you solving it for? What is your solution? Moving down into your business model of how do you actually make money? What is your competitive advantage? Then moving into the go-to-market model that you're going to be using, which I'll talk through in a bit. And then really down into the funnel of activities and how do you measure those activities to drive outcomes and know what's working and what's not. So what we're going to do now is for the next roughly 60 minutes is actually step through each of these. If you do need to jump off, I know many of you have only just joined. If you do need to jump off at any point, the session is recorded. I'll pause through each of these. It'll be a chance to actually complete this as we go. If we run out of time today, more than happy to schedule a follow-up at some point if needed, just depending how everyone's traveling with it. So kicking off with the top of the canvas on the customer, if you all just map out for now or reflect on who is your customer, what is their problem? Ideally, this is in their words, not your words, to those questions before in the chat. This is the language they use around their problem. What is your solution? And what is the beneficial outcome? Now, the beneficial outcome is the solution, is the benefit. Hopefully it's direct, hopefully it's tangible, that the customer gets in relation to the specific problem you're solving for by using your product or service. So just spend a couple of minutes on that. If there's any questions, sing out, drop them in the chat or just open your mic. And as soon as you finish it, just drop a little thumbs up in the chat window or a thumbs up emoji on the Zoom screen. Sweet. So getting a fair few thumbs up. While you're completing, I'll just step through an example. So this is an example of one of our portfolio companies, Swarm Farm. So they are targeting broadacre crop farmers. It's specifically broadacre, so large acreage. Don would know better than me the specifics of the hectares under management that they're actually targeting.
Big ones.
Yeah. A big part of what they're solving for is the talent shortage, the labor shortage on remote farms. The way they do that is through autonomous bots to replace tractors. And then the beneficial outcomes is obviously on the labor side because these bots can run 24/7 without intervention. But it also leads to higher yields, which in turn leads to better margins, but also better soil. So the smaller form bots to replace the large tractors means less soil compaction, less erosion, and there's all these ancillary benefits as well. What's interesting though is that the driver for a farmer to purchase is the talent piece. And so understanding what is the main problem you are solving for, even if you have several other benefits, just really fixating on what that main problem is that you're solving for. Would anyone like to share a reflection so far or something they've gained? Leo, I saw you just came off.
Yeah, I can just go through what I've put down on my side. So the ideal customer profile, CFOs or financial managers at universities. The specific problem is that they usually can work out how much their academic programs cost or the courses cost using spreadsheets internally. But the big question is how much should they cost? So what we have are institutional benchmark data, which is built from models, not surveys. And using this data, they can use that to optimize their resources, people and facilities, and dollars to increase their margins.
Got it.
If that fits.
Yep. So helping them to understand the true cost of a program or course delivery.
Correct.
Yep. Great.
And just one of the things I might just throw in there. Sorry, I had to duck out, so you may have covered it, but one of the challenges I find with entrepreneurs is that we know our customers' problems better than they do. And we know the thing that they're suffering better than they do, but often the customer doesn't actually know that yet or doesn't feel it or doesn't align with it. So just one thing I like to share at this point is that making sure that the problem is one that the customer actually goes, yes, I've got that problem, not one that you think, because the purpose of getting that initial pitch is just to get engagement. You can always bait and switch them in the future. But so often I just see entrepreneurs using problem statements that they know to be true, but their customer doesn't yet agree with. So I just throw that out there as an issue we see.
Yeah, and to that point, ideally that is in the language of the customer. Like if you can harness their words and repeat them back to them. Sweet, moving on. So next actually no, there is one part. So one thing to think about as well, you may have seen this before, I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but the adoption curve for new technologies in markets. You'll often hear that expression, crossing the chasm. I highly recommend you look at it for your particular industry and what you're doing, but understanding, in the case of Swarm Farm, for example, their initial traction were with these farmers who were typically younger. Maybe they'd just been a generational change of farm ownership. They were happy to try new technology. In fact, they even wanted to be seen as kind of the tech influencers in their space. But the bulk of the farmers were so reluctant to try new technology because it wasn't proven. They stick with what they know. For any of you familiar with agriculture, you tend to have your one color of tractor that you stand by to the death of the world. You're loyal to that for life. And so trying to sell to the mass market from day one would be really hard. Instead, they had to target a certain type of broadacre farmer with a different demographic who was happy to take the tech risk because they were interested in the technology. And so understanding where your market, like your sector currently is really important. And as you grow out, you have to cross the chasm. You've got to build trust for the mass market. So in agriculture, it's about 12 to 18 months of a farmer seeing what their neighbor is doing before they will buy that new piece of technology. Very, very low trust of new tech. Understanding these dynamics for your market is really important. And where is your industry at in terms of their tech adoption? And understanding one little activity to do here is reflect on your existing customers. Where are they? There's a part of your market that will they're the laggards that will only move when they are absolutely forced to. Might be that they need regulatory change before they will actually shift. It's like my mum with a smartphone. Like she only has it when there are no other options in the market. So again, I throw that out there as something to dwell on and reflect on. Where are your current customers? Where is the state of your sector? And when you're looking at your ICP, understanding where do customers fall in the tech adoption curve.
Yeah, and just from my sector, so higher education, super conservative. They will take a long time to review things before they buy them. But the ones that we've currently got, we've had for 10, 15 years plus. So those that get it and use it. But for the majority, it's taking forever to try and get new clients across the line.
Yeah, and particularly tertiary, right? Like a lot of the management and leadership have existed purely in an educational system where they value retention of information. So you get this concept of I'm going to share my data with someone else is foreign inside a lot of Australian universities. So it's a tough sell.
Yep.
So moving forward, you'll have a copy of these slides afterwards. I'm not going to dwell on this particular bit, but moving forward into the next part of the canvas, which is around the business model. So here we start looking at what is your revenue model and what is your competitive advantage. So again, I think we should only need kind of 2 or 3 minutes on this one. Revenue model is fairly straightforward. How are you making money? Now, going back to what we said before about the 5 points of focus, do you have multiple revenue streams or do you have one? What is the primary revenue stream? And the second part here, competitive advantage, just to drop a book reference, highly recommend you grab Hamilton Helmer's 7 Powers. So the book is called 7 Powers. It's written by Hamilton Helmer. It talks about durability and what generates pricing power. Highly recommend it as a book worth reading to help you understand durability and where you can, the levers for competitive advantage. But 2 minutes on this one, map out your revenue model and your competitive advantage.
And while you're doing that, again, just throwing in some common things we see. We get a lot of pitches and we deal with a lot of founders and entrepreneurs. And what founders like to solve problems that are important to them, and often they're just not important to a market. Then, if it is important to market, there is a big group of founders that then somehow the market can't afford to pay what the founder needs to charge. And so it's really important to be doing sort of a bit of a dance with these. It's like if you've got your ideal client and you're really sure it's a pain point that they feel in their words and your solution is going to solve it, I don't know how many times we've seen it then fall down at the revenue model. And then even if they got some early clients, they didn't have any of Helmer's 7 Powers. And so they built a business that gave them a little bit of cash, but there was no value to be built. And so I really want to reiterate Aaron's points that whilst these seem very basic to start with, constantly doing this dance, if your goal is to have more than a hobby and more than sort of a sideline business and to build value, well, it's got to have a competitive advantage, and Helmer's is great. And it's got to be able to sustain pricing, and you can work backwards through these. So make sure you keep doing this dance so you don't end up in the bucket of so many entrepreneurs.
As everyone finishes this one, I'll just share an example. So one of our portfolio companies, Gaspot, they have IoT sensors that go on large LPG tanks and cylinders for the commercial clients, so like hotels, pubs, that sort of thing. And they give companies like Origin, which is the LPG fleet owner, visibility on LPG tank levels across their entire fleet. So rather than Origin sending a truck every Tuesday morning to go and fill gas tanks that might already be full, now they can schedule all those truck rolls on an as-needed basis, which turns out generates a very large ROI for a company like Origin. And so if I just map through their canvas, they're targeting LPG fleet owners like Origin or a nursery out of Mexico. The problem that they're solving for is right now they have no visibility on tank levels, which means tanks might run out. And when a tank runs out, that's when Origin loses a customer. They churn. So they have a tank monitoring solution that is a combination of IoT, light hardware, and SaaS. And now their revenue model, they had a lot of options they could look at. They could license the technology to Origin. They could sell tanks, actually work with the tank manufacturers to embed it in tanks. They could appoint distributors in market. They could just sell the hardware and let Origin build their own APIs and whatever else. Or they could sell it with the platform. They could charge implementation fees, go out and do all the installs. Instead, they sell the software, they sell the hardware. It's a 5 + 5 year contract, so they're locking them in for 10 years. They sell it direct to the LPG companies, so selling direct to large enterprise, and they do it on a self-install model where Origin goes out and installs it themselves. Now that's where they landed. That's their revenue. That's their business model, essentially. What makes them sticky? These tanks and cylinders are all out in remote locations. The switching cost to go and change over an entire fleet to a cheaper sensor that might save a few bucks when it's delivering a massive ROI for the likes of Origin. And it's embedded into workflows. So now it's actually used on all of their truck rolls. It's used in their dashboarding. Origin have built out an entire integration into their ERP system that's now used for dashboarding across the organization and their long contracts. So hopefully you can get some insights there into for yourselves. I noticed there's been some chats dropping. Mark is on it. So this is why I love you, buddy. Thank you.
I find Reddit talks to the lowest common denominator and helps me really understand. And then selling lemonade, perfect, done, easy.
So good.
I got my process power figured out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very useful. Would anyone like to share a reflection on the business model or the competitive advantage?
I can go again if no one else is going.
I have I'll jump in if that's all right.
Yeah,
Yep.
Tom, go for it.
We've reached a point where we've organically grown really strongly from like in-person sales, but we have to kind of make that jump into online marketing now. And I'm wondering how much that translates to digital advertising, demos, books, sign up, etc. Or if it's just worth relocating the sales team around to like our ideal markets until we can kind of get the revenue to justify like a GTM marketer or graphic designers, etc.
So what drove the change? Sorry, I may have missed that at the start of what you said there. Like what led you to make that change?
Well, we've reached a point with sales now where we've got good recurring revenue, but I know that to scale, we can't keep visiting clients in person. We have to reach them online.
Got it. Yeah, so that'll come up in this next little bit that we hit on. Yeah, that's perfect. Sweet. We may as well jump forward. Oh, Lee, did you want to share yours?
Sure. So on the revenue side, it's a annual subscription for this new AI benchmarks that we're putting together. And the competitive advantage is that no one else has our data set. So we've actually accumulated a very large, very detailed data set over the many, many years that we've been doing this. And in fact, just on Don's point too, on what are their actual pain points, one of the things that we've done for our current clients is providing this free to them so they can use it and get into it. But because we have AI tool, that they can use to interrogate the benchmarks, we're actually capturing and recording those questions so we can see what they're actually asking to try and figure out what their pain points are. So then we can actually address those specific issues.
Yeah, so you have proprietary data, which is essentially like a cornered resource in Hamilton Helmer's language.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Happy to hop in as well here if you want.
Yeah, go for it, Lawrence. Yep.
All right. In terms of a revenue model, SaaS subscription, for when we're working with schools, it's more annual contracts priced by enrollment numbers. If we're working with enterprise or government, that's more of enterprise licensing. We also, with integrators and so forth with APIs, then we look at custom pricing for that. When we head over to competitive advantage, so some of the competitive advantage is counter positioning, so public risk detection versus device surveillance for the parents that we're working with, process power, so structured intervention frameworks, data advantage would be one as well, so it's a customizable, evolving keyword intelligence. And then also some of the brand credibility that we've got from, we won Australia Financial Review's Most Innovative Company last year. We also won Telstra Small Medium Business Award. So some of those things that we're able to leverage as well for the discussions that we're having. One of the challenges, though, that we're finding in some of our discussions is that with this early risk detection that we're able to provide, sometimes ignorance is bliss. And so by identifying a problem, people, then are expected, organizations are then expected to address the problem. And so it's sometimes easier to not know about the problem and avoid having to actually do anything. So thinking of ways that we're able to shift that onus and making it more risky for them not to do anything than to actually do something.
I think that last point is really, really great, Lawrence, in particular. The people will take action when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. And the more you can amplify that up, like the pain of staying the same or the pain of where they are currently at, and emphasizing that through their own language, but also sometimes it takes data, sometimes it takes an educational process, and making it as easy as possible, like reducing the pain for them to adopt something new and change. And
exactly.
So sometimes it's actually about de-risking. So just to share a quick anecdote here, Adrian DeMarco, founder of Tech One, who's one of our shareholders and venture partners, he talked about the early days of Technology One where they would charge an implementation fee. So they're selling ERP software to governments, and they initially would charge this quite expensive fee to go and customize the software and embed it into a government agency. He flipped that model around. He switched to a model where there was zero implementation fee. They took all that risk. So they took that cost of implementation themselves as just a cost item, and instead charged a higher SaaS, a higher recurring. And he attributes that to completely changing their growth curve, because now they de-risked the upfront purchase. There didn't need to be something coming off the CapEx. Instead, it was coming purely out of OpEx with a higher recurring. Longer term meant greater margins, greater recurring revenues. And so often it is about understanding those dynamics, to your point, Lawrence, and then using our business model to actually shift the risk, or at least the perception of risk, so that then the pain of staying the same is just outweighs the pain of change.
Yeah, completely agree, and great example.
So moving forward, the next part we look at is, what is your go-to-market model? Now, just a little bit of context here. If you haven't heard of go-to-market models before, Blackbird, I'm pretty sure it was Tom at Blackbird, wrote this great post about 4 different go-to-market models: self-serve, PLG, versus inside sales, versus field sales, versus channel sales through partners and others. I will drop, I thought there was actually a QR code here, but I will drop afterwards the link to that, or Mark, being as awesome as he is, will no doubt beat me to it. I'm not sure if you're familiar with these from before, but just to understand, Self-serve is very much like we might be familiar with it, jump on a website, download a product, PLG-led sales. Inside sales is where you have your sales team. They're focused on generating the leads through to closing them. Field sales is when you're, to the example of Swarm Farm, you're driving down people's driveways, knocking on their doors, attending events, getting face-to-face. And channel sales is where you're using a distributor or a partner to actually reach your market. So pretty straightforward. Where we map them now into, oh, no, that is ours. Okay, sorry, I thought there was another slide there. What I'll get you to do now is identify which of those you are and drop it on your canvas. So on the canvas, you'll see a section there around your go-to-market model. Now, some of you will immediately say, we're all 4. We're 3 of the 4. We're doing this and this and this and this. And back at the point of the start, every time you have an and or an or in anything you're doing, you're doubling your workflow. And it's a huge diversion of resources, time, everything else, and also expertise.
And a lot of people that say we have multiple of these, what normally we find is that your pricing is the cheapest and then your go-to-market model is the most expensive. And so often companies will have self-serve type pricing, yet they're running an inside sales or field sales pricing sales model, and then they end up going broke. And so you've sort of got to align product with the reality of that go-to-market model.
Just while people are reflecting on that, Tom, kind of to touch on your point, I think it was yours, maybe it was someone else's, but I'll just share an anecdote. Like, we see a lot of pitches. We often hear from founders who've built great business, turning over maybe 2 mil, 3 mil ARR. And we ask them to talk about their sales engine. And they're like, we've achieved this with 0 marketing spend, entirely through our own networks. And now we're raising capital to go and start marketing. We would much prefer to see a founder who day one, even if they had strong networks in the market, they were targeting those existing relationships through experimenting in their marketing activities and their funnel activities. We would rather see that you've developed the muscle of building a scalable sales engine than just purely picking up the phone, calling your mate and driving a conversion. So we're looking for these systemic signals. Sometimes we start very much field sales. It's the founder going out knocking on doors because we need to get that feedback. We need to hear the insights. We need to capture the language so we can use it back with the customers. But at some point, we then need to your point, Tom, drive to something that's scalable and systemic.
Yeah, I think we've got like enough in-person feedback that we're very comfortable and we have like a large client base. But I guess that next hire feels like a marketing role where it's like, here's our channels, what's getting attention, what's getting demos booked. Sorry, is my audio bouncing back? Or is that just myself?
Good. It's all good.
Okay. Yeah, just it feels like that next step where like those roles are a bit higher. So like our sales hires are like 80 to 100K a year, but those marketing roles I'm looking for, they're looking for 200 to 300. They've got experience and they can prove that they can get online signups.
Yeah, on the hiring, if we get time at the end, Don and I can chat about hiring for these roles too, and just making sure you're hiring from the right, from an experience base at the right stage of the company lifecycle as well. As we get into this next bit, Tom, I'm keen to hear you reflect more. So I think there's a lot more we could unpack there.
Aaron, can I ask a question about this? So for us, we're sort of kicking off the field sales piece at the moment, but just reading this has been really helpful. So just reading, inside sales is probably where we want to be. But is it common to kind of kick off with one, given you're starting at 0, and then move through to others later? Or if we want to be at inside sales, should we start at inside sales?
Sorry, Don.
I can well, what sort of like fire shots and aim, but what we tend to is founders hanging around ones for absolutely fine to focus, and it's absolutely fine to shift. But what we tend to find is that the product itself doesn't shift in a manner that they would like to suit their go-to-market. And so that comes to the point before that if you start off in one and you build a product for one and a pricing for one, we find that it can be a little bit difficult to move. And so in your instance, are you making the shift because you've tapped out the existing market and you're now looking for more? Or are you making the shift because you're frustrated that you're not getting the traction that you want and you think you need to go in a different direction?
It's probably, we don't expect to make the shift for a while. I think it's more that field sales is what's working for now. But I mean, our target market is schools, and we'll spend our entire lives in cars driving from suburb to suburb if that if we achieve scale. And so, ideally we get enough brand reputation where we don't need to be in there in person is the hope, I guess. And we can do the inside sales piece.
But I think that's the perfect transition point.
Yep.
Sorry, my internet's lagging. I think that's the perfect transition, because if you're getting brand recognition and you're finding a way to not do as much field sales, that's a perfect way to do it, right? Because the market is responding to you. What we find sometimes is we're doing field sales, but our product is priced for inside sales, and we try and make that shift, but actually we have a product pricing problem rather than a channel. But what you've just described there, I'd be open to it, and then if it happens, great, and if it doesn't, that's life.
Yeah, cool. No, that's great. Thank you.
The other nuance I'd add here, like if you're crossing multiple markets, so you're selling in the US versus say Australia, but you'll find your go-to-market model has to be very different. Usually. So in the Australian market, we tend to sell direct in most sectors to enterprise or large clients in the B2B world. In the US, it's much more leveraging distribution channels and partners. So you'll find that in different markets, you need a very different go-to-market model as well. So moving forward now, looking at this bottom section. So you've probably all heard of go-to-market funnels before. You've seen multiple different iterations of them. They're all essentially the same thing. How do you generate interest at the top of the funnel, and how do you drive it through to conversion, and then also retention and growth and referral? So as I said at the start, like any good VC, we adopted this into our own framework. So in the canvas, you'll see that section at the bottom left. Now, these are your activities on what are you going to do to take a customer from unaware to aware. And for some of you, it sounds like as well, this is unaware they have a problem to aware they have a problem, or at least helping them understand. But then from an aware to a lead, from a lead to a sale, and then it doesn't end at a sale. Obviously, we've got to activate them, retain them, and hopefully get them referring customers as well. So I've got some notes here just on each of these. And is Jack still on the call? I want Jack to add some color here as well. He may have gone.
Yeah, no, still here.
Still here. Jack, but I'm going to get you to chime in at any point. But yeah, so these are the activities. So just to be really clear, these are the activities that you are using to generate interest, top of funnel, down through conversion, retention, and referral. Just by quick show of hands, who has actually documented their funnel activities already? Daniel, awesome. Lawrence. All right, the rest who aren't putting their hands up, Ocean, that means you haven't previously documented your funnel activities. Yeah. So again, if you're trying to build a business for scale and transitioning from founder-led everything to a systemic approach where we can go and, as we said before, hire headcount once you've done that bit to repeat the process, then it is important we document. It's very common, Joe, to that point. Like in the early days, there is a bit of spray and pray to discover what works, but we need to be systemic in our approach to how we do that to know what's working and what's not working. Jack, do you want to add any flavor to the funnel of activities?
All I'd say is like just having a funnel at the end of the day is just an accountability measure. So that's fine if it still is a spray and pray because you're just using a funnel as an accountability tool to actually identify and show you what's working and what's not working and where you should focus your time.
Yeah, and in addition to that accountability, what we often find is that founders don't separate out the need to build awareness and then take people that are aware into a lead and then the lead to sale. They don't actually break up those component parts. They're actually three unique motions that require three very unique ways of approaching it. And so often we will go in and talk to a founder and they'll tell us about their sales process. And that's all well and good, but they're not getting enough leads. And they're not getting enough leads because they don't have any lead magnets out there because they're not actually doing the activities to take people that are unaware. And so often we see breaking it down into this component. And then as what Jack says, you need that accountability. Now, there was like Joe Thomas put a comment, inside sales primarily, but probably relevant to conferences as our target demo. And I think to me, something like a conference is here where it's like we use conferences to take people that are unaware that we exist to aware that we exist. And so that's more to me often living here in this. And then we have some way at the conference, QR codes, handouts, free whatever, to generate a lead. And then we sell them inside. Then someone from a desk goes and does it. And so you can sort of see how some of these things are sort of integrated. And if, as an example, you're going to go to conferences to make people unaware, then you've got to make sure that that is very defined, that you've got some measurability, you've got some accountability, whereas often people go to conferences, it was a nice time, and then you get back and you've achieved bugger all.
I think to that point, Don, like, so, we'll often ask founders who say they have a sales problem. It's like, is the problem actually on generating interest or is the problem on conversion? And I think was it Cam? I think it was Cam in the comments earlier. You made a comment that you've got a lot of interest, but it's converting it to sales that is the challenging bit.
And one of the things is where Tribe's got a bias. We're looking for high growth, scalable companies. But that doesn't mean you can't still build a great company. But sometimes what happens, the founder has a clear problem that customers face, a good product, right? A revenue model of some sort, but some markets just don't have a viable way and a cost-effective way to make people aware that you exist, generate leads, and then sell them. There's some structural bloody problem in the market. And you probably want to learn that soon, if that is the case, before you dedicate your life to it. And so that's why, again, I keep reminding people to accommodate the whole, depending on what your goals are. And if your goals are to build, a big business, this has got to work. If it's just to, make some dollars on the side, maybe you don't have as bigger issues. But often when we have a look at some products, it's like, wow, that's awesome. But there is just no way you would be able to cost effectively, based on your revenue model, be able to find leads at scale. And that's a good conversation to have.
So hopefully you've had a bit of a chance to map out. Sorry,
I just wanted to say one thing here. I think one thing to add here is the more vague your marketing activities are on the demand side of things, the harder you have to hustle on the conversion side as well. So the clearer your message, the clearer you attract the right customer, the easier your sales will convert later too.
There are some people on this call that will know this line, but the universe rewards specificity and brutally punishes ambiguity in all 100%. Parts of your life.
100%.
Yeah, it's a great point about, I see founders who generate interest for interest's sake. Come to my event because there's free beer. We get so much interest. It just doesn't convert. No, really good point. So to drive this then into the other side of the bottom of the canvas, you have your activities mapped. Now we need to know how to actually measure, are these activities being effective? And so this is where we look at the metrics. There's a great framework of Pirate metrics, called Pirate because of the R acronym down the side there. I think they were originally created by Dave McClure from 500 Startups. But basically, it's really simple. You need to be measuring volume at each stage and then conversion to the next thing. And volume is at not just the stage, but each activity. And so to put it really simply, if you're spending money on an example like Facebook ads, you need to be tracking how many eyeballs were on there. Of those eyeballs, how many clicked? So from impression to click, how many landed on the landing page? How many then filled out XYZ information? Of that, how many engaged with the follow-up or the free piece of resource that you gave away? From those, how many converted? And ideally, you want it tracked where you have all the data where a customer who came from that Facebook campaign can be tracked through the entire life cycle through to retention and referral. And then with that data, you can start to inform our marketing spend is best spent in this channel with this type of campaign because it leads to the greatest lifetime value of customer with the greatest NRR, most likely to refer others. So having that kind of cohort analysis by activity can only be achieved through measuring it. And so on this bottom side of the canvas, put some metrics into what you will actually be measuring. And then as you measure those, you then measure the conversion rates. And so very quickly, you should be able to identify, man, we don't have an interest issue. We're getting loads of top of funnel, but we're not converting. Or also identifying then at the bottom, your churn, where you're actually losing customers and not getting the referrals. Now, just throwing some random examples in here of things you can measure. If you are field sales and you are attending conferences and events, you're actually measuring how many people you are interacting with, how many connections are being made, how many proposals are being sent on the back of that, how many of those are actually converting through to invoice, how many of those are converting through to payment, how many of those actually implement. And again, I'll give a war story. Oh, Dave, did you want to add something there?
Nope. Go for it. Sorry.
One of our portfolio companies, very good early days selling to mining and resource sector, so big enterprise customers. They would send in their purchase order, buy a whole heap of equipment, great SaaS recurring revenue, fantastic. But then kind of forgot about the customer. 2 years later, that logo churned. And when they went back to do the post-mortem and why did we lose this customer? Turns out they never actually implemented the technology on site. It wasn't effectively installed. And so again, this doesn't end when the cash lands at bank and you ship the product. Retention is a key part of this. So how do you measure retention? How do you measure logo expansion? How do you measure your revenue growth and revenue expansion from a logo? So as you build out this funnel back here of activities from interest through to conversion, make sure you're mapping it against your metrics of how you're actually going to measure each of those and then measure the changes. The whole point of this is so that you can find out what's not working and what is working. So to Jack's point before about driving accountability, just going to put a bit of flavor to what that actually means. So if you flip your funnel of metrics and you can quickly work out, in order to get a revenue target, you can reverse engineer how many conferences you need to be attending, how many people you need to be interacting with at those conferences. Or if you're inside sales, you know your revenue target that you need to be hitting. If you've set up your metrics correctly and you know your conversion rates at each stage of the funnel, you can work backwards to work out how many cold calls do you need to be making every day to achieve the conversion right through to the revenue target. And then this is where you can start using this as a bit of an accountability tool with your teams, but also identifying where things need to be tweaked and improved. So these just step through what I was just saying there. Now, how do you work out what's not working then? So if your funnel is failing to convert, so you're measuring your metrics on the bottom right there, you're doing all the right activities, you're sending out all the EDMs, or you're attending all the conferences, or you are doing all the cold outbound, but it's just not getting the conversion through to sales or retention, then the first step is to experiment with the activities in each of those stages. So it's really logical, right? But you can see how now having an approach that's actually documented on paper and now allows you to act systemically in doing diagnosis of what do I need to tweak to experiment with. So if your metrics aren't converting, go back to the left-hand side of the bottom, change an activity at the right stage, run the experiment again, collect your data, see if that improves conversion, keep repeating that process. Now, if you keep repeating that process and you're still not driving conversion, that's when we need to go back up the top. We need to look at the strategy. Maybe we don't have the right business model. To Adrian DeMarco's point, wasn't growing at the rate he wanted to grow. In other words, the metrics weren't working. Tried all the activities across the sales funnel, marketing funnel. That wasn't working. Go back to the business model. What if we don't charge an implementation fee? What if we charge a higher SaaS? We de-risk the purchase up front. Then run through the revised marketing and sales engine for that, and then seeing the conversion. So if the step-by-steps you've experimented there, they're not working, go back, change the strategy at the top, repeat the process, go again. Now, you might start by changing the business model, but then at some point, you might actually have to go back and look at the ICP. So right back to the very top, tightening that up and go again. But hopefully now you can see how this process gives you a systemic way to actually diagnose what is working and what is not working, rather than just going by the like spray and pray is great in the early stage, but rather than just going on gut feel, actually having something that you can hand over to others to also grow.
I'd love Tribe to get to the point, and I know we won't because well, maybe we will, but I don't want to come across too arrogant. But we do away with pitch decks, and founders submit their GTM canvas, because this is where it all happens. And it just even doing a little bit of work on some of these clarifies your strategy, it clarifies your structure, it clarifies your capital needs. And when someone can show the ability to dance between these things, I think it's quite important.
Aaron had a question we threw in the comments from Nathan. Go for it, Nathan.
Yeah, I was just wondering, how long do you experiment on a particular way of going about it before you decide that it's not working?
That's a great question.
That's a bloody good question. So there's experiment on the particular action in your funnel. So we've done this activity, and that can be to the point of exhaustion. Like we have literally tried this activity repeatedly and we're just not seeing the conversion. We're just not seeing the leads come through. And that should be done with a lot of A and B split testing, a lot of trial and error. But then you go back and try again at the top. Zooming out, if you it is still keep failing, no matter how much you've changed your funnel activities or your strategy at the top, there is a point at which you do need to call it and give up and go home. But I think on the experimentation of the steps in the funnel specifically, so that bottom half, I think predefining what success and failure looks like. So one thing I see founders do is they might throw money at something for a little bit. That didn't work, I give up, try the next thing. But to actually properly experiment with something, like what would we need to see before we run this in order for us to say this worked or this isn't working? And the reason I say that is I think sometimes founders get caught in the trap of good is the enemy of great, where it's like, oh, we got some sales. Awesome. We should keep doing more of that. But actually, was it the most effective mechanism for generating sales? Is there a better way? And so what we see is sometimes founders double down on something that's getting some early wins without actually having done all the experiments. And maybe there is a bigger opportunity left on the table that it would have been better if they'd actually just not gotten any sales on that first activity, where then they would have failed it fast and gone to the next one. So I think predefining success and failure metrics before going in is a handy little tool.
Yeah, it's a great question because it's such a hard question. But to add to what Aaron said there before, it's often founders haven't done this funnel properly and haven't closed the loop, and they've given up at one phase, and they haven't tried to push their way through. And if you've fully been able to push your way through and your business model would not allow you to have that length of time or have that outcome, then you got to change.
And I think it's also good to call that, like, working at, is it an execution problem or is it a strategy problem? So if you've rinsed a couple $1 million trying to do outbound sales and it's not working, like going back to, is it internally the team's capability of doing that, or fundamentally does the market that you're selling to does not like that approach? And we've got some war stories, like some early portfolio companies that have done a playbook in Australia or New Zealand, and that way has gone really well. They've tried to expand to the US, UK, and apply the same playbook, and they've rinsed millions of dollars. So it's like trying to find out what is the happy medium of not giving up too early and then thinking it's the execution versus spending way too much money and blowing it all down the drain.
Yep. I think to that point as well, Jack, one of the big things we see, and it's a big problem for venture capital backed companies, is so much of the money goes into lead from sale and then the awareness piece, and they end up just blowing so many dollars expanding, when what they should have done is put a little bit into that awareness, get that working, and then expand it. Now do a little bit more into the next one, then get it working. And they've gone blow it all on. You know, I've seen $10 million blown in 2 years for a company that ended up with 100,000 ARR, and that hurts.
Yeah, I think everyone underestimates how often this happens. And like a great analogy is like build the machine before you scale. And the way I like to think of that is when you go back to your sales and marketing efforts, have you built a repeatable, a reliable, and efficient way to serve your customers? And if you can't tick all those three, you don't really want to raise money and start throwing that at the like your sales and marketing efforts because you haven't worked it out. And I think if you go back to founder-led sales, the only expense is paying yourself for that. So go and work it out. Go find something that is repeatable, reliable, and efficient. And once you have that, then you're ready to take on the capital and really build a team out underneath you to go and execute it.
The thing I would also add to that is, it sounds really basic, but become really good at having good conversations with people. Like sometimes we might be attracting the right people, we send out emails, we get some interest back, but then the conversations stall, or we never hear back. And to really take that opportunity to not take that as a rejection, but really dig for the data, dig for the feedback. And to Aaron's point earlier, like maybe it's going back to the problem. Is the problem that I'm seeing actually the same problem that the customer is seeing? Am I speaking their language? Is this an immediate need? Is there an urgency here? So I think sometimes it comes back to something as basic as have good conversations and really draw data out of those before you give up.
Agreed. And if you were to correlate people that are successful, it's the ones, they may not love it, although the really good ones do. They're not afraid to pick up the phone. The amount of time that I see people try to do sales just by text message and emails because they're a little scared of a bit of rejection. If that's you, go and do a bit of internal work to work out what childhood issues still remain as to why we're scared of rejection, and then drive it. But Marin's actually launched a course on some of this sales stuff, which we'll share a link. Is that, or is it only corporates, Marin? Am I talking out of school?
No, it's any technical founder or team that struggles converting sales.
You've got to just imagine the person that you're talking to is just as scared as you are. But yeah, we'll share that link as well. But I see that so many. It's like we've built all these things, and then you watch the founder, and they're sitting behind emails going, "Sorry to disturb you, and I hope this is an okay time, and I really hope it's all right that I email. But would you buy my stuff?" And scared money doesn't win. It's just something to consider.
I had a really strong reminder of that this morning. I called up a lead who I hadn't heard from in a week, thinking he was ghosting me, and just had that same sort of thought of, I can't do this over email. I've got to actually make the phone call and make it awkward. Turns out he'd quit his job for another job, and at the end of the conversation said, "I'll bring you with to my next job, and I'm going into a handover meeting, and I'm going to put you forward to the next person to take it from." It turned what was going to probably be a dead lead if I hadn't made the phone call into a 2-for-1. I went, shit.
Yeah. And then as long as you accept, there'll be some times where they tell you get fucked, and it'll all balance out.
And I've done Marin's course. I can highly recommend it to everyone on this call. And in fact, just a bit of feedback, we had following her process, working through an email sequence. We've actually progressed now to a demo for a large university system. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll see how that goes.
Woo! Well done, Lee. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome to hear.
The other thing I just want to expansion, I find, is another one that is just money left on the table, where there's so much energy going around to trying to find new. In some instances, if you were to expand your existing customers, you would actually find a better result. So just something else there to consider.
I think at this point we can open up to more convos. So I appreciate that was a fairly rapid step through the canvas. Hopefully you found it valuable, but keen to go through specifics for anyone, open up the conversation.
Just a fundamental question. Sorry, Joe.
You go, Lee.
Just a practical one. Tracking all these metrics. Do you just set up a spreadsheet? Do you just track everything in a spreadsheet?
If you're asking, do you, as in me personally, I always start with a spreadsheet.
Yep.
Nothing more complicated than that.
The more people start with like complex systems, the almost zero chance that you're going to be successful. The people that are successful are what Jack described before. They've just got like 5 lines in a spreadsheet and they're tracking their different stuff. And you then set up a team accountability thing, and then you get fancy reporting and you get fancy systems. But I think fancy CRMs and tracking has done more to damage founder prospects than help it, because they sell this allure far too early. And so simple is best. And as Aaron said earlier, it's a forward-facing dashboard. If you know you need 10 sales this month, it's going to depend on what you did 4 months ago. And so keep it simple.
Yep.
My question is sort of a top of funnel and awareness piece for us. So when we get a demo, we convert pretty well. We're seeing about 65% conversion from demo to customer. We're only 5 months old with this product, so awareness is a gap. It's what, particularly when you've got, I'm doing all the demos. When you've got founder-led sales, what have been the things that you have seen have been sort of the most effective at that awareness piece to fill that sort of top of the funnel. I don't need many. I only need 5 or 6. I only need 5 or 6 a month. But it's been very sort of just manual and pounding the pavement. It's not repeatable and scalable per the earlier comments.
What sector are you in?
So sales tech, so AI sales agents, but specifically for consumer organizations. I think education. So I've got a couple of higher ed clients, Lee. Education, broadband, and so high consideration, high value, infrequent purchases.
Okay. So you're horizontal, you're cross sector selling to sales, right?
Leaders, basically. Yeah.
So my answer was to immediately jump into the vertical. Like to your question about what's the ideal, what's been effective, it's where you literally have an industry where you can identify every potential customer in your ICP and then every individual within that in the role that you want, and you've got a cold call list of 100 names and you just work through it.
Yeah.
So,
and for us, that's education. Like of our 18 customers, 16 of them are education customers.
And for you, what was your go-to-market model though? You're attending conferences, so you're doing field sales?
Look, no, inside sales. So we see that our ICP have a tendency to go to conferences, but we're doing so cold email, outbound, a little bit of LinkedIn outreach, but it has been cold email was a disaster, I'd have to say. Very easy to get the contact details of people who work in education because they're registered by the government, so they're very easy to scrape the contact details. But as a result, they're not overly enthusiastic about outreach in the education world. Cold call has worked, so cold calling has definitely worked for us, but it's expensive. Yeah.
Okay. Marin's probably, if you catch up with Marin around the education sector, like that's one she knows well, and Lee obviously as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Thank you.
But in terms of, so I think just one of the things that we often talk about in these sessions is some of the marketing trends. What we're seeing in the world we play in is LinkedIn is a great market for a great channel for us, but in the world of so much generated AI generated noise, you have to stand out with signal, reciprocity, some sort of human connection specific to that individual. Jack, can you remind me, what was a podcast with the guy who talked about reciprocity in LinkedIn messages and how he was generating interest through it?
Oh, I can't remember. Don, can you remember that one?
No,
I'll find it and send it to you, Joe. But yeah, if you're talking cold outreach, you need to stand out. Then something that is actually human, not auto-generated. We find leading with value.
Oh, hang on, I think I got it. This is the guy.
The sports teams at colleges.
Yeah, then he scraped all of the CFOs and where they went to college. Is it? And then because he knew people in the US go to college, follow their football team, a week before their football team was to play, he sent them an email offering them a bet around their college football team, and the open rate around that was like some huge fraction higher. And that's because somebody had put in some effort for something that was a bit more personal. This is probably not kosher, but I did see one doing the rounds the other day where someone was saying, I saw you on the Epstein list, and that, he said, got 50% open rate. I'm not advocating that, but I'm just saying between personal and standing out, you got to do something. The other day I was editing our podcast. I can't believe we've gotten this far without mentioning that we have a podcast. But as I'm editing it, someone emailed saying, and the line was, more people should listening to your podcast, which is a true statement. And I opened the email and it was someone pitching services around marketing, specifically podcasts. And so it was on point. It was timely. Yeah. So it's hit and miss, but you've got to be more than, hey, buy my thing.
Yeah. I mean, I connect a lot and never pitch on. That drives me nuts. And I'm like, let's get connected. And then they try and sell me something. So I figure I will never do that. And LinkedIn's been
that
good.
is a great environment to learn, not what to do. Like
Yeah.
it's
I've been on the buy side for so much of my life that I just try and apply the things that made me want to punch people in the head when I was the buyer to how I try and sell stuff.
Joel, what's your ideal customer? I think you mentioned a few. You mentioned, is it education, government, a few different ones?
No, so look, mostly education. So admissions and enrollments teams. We've ended up with a couple of customers outside of that in broadband and in other areas. We've been pulled there, whether that will look, we're 5 months into this product, whether that will be where we land or we stay vertical specific is, still to be seen, but our outbound efforts have been entirely within education. So we've got everything from University of Cambridge at the top end, down to short course Australian providers selling, $400 introduction to dog psychology courses, a number of higher ed providers, and also RTOs. So we really cover the range in education from transactional non-award through to very expensive.
And that might be the challenge you're facing, because your product is something that's quite competitive right now, especially when we throw AI out. Everyone hears the word AI. So the more narrow you go.
Yeah, not so much from a conversion point of view. Like the minute we talk to people, they buy. Like our conversion is high. And everyone knows they've got the problem. It's the awareness that the solution exists is where we have the challenge. So the minute I put it in their hands, they give me their money. Well, 67% of them end up giving me their money. It's how do we get people aware is really where our challenge is.
That's what I'm referring to. The more narrow and niche you can be, even in your marketing, the more open ears you will get.
Yeah, okay, cool.
But
Thank you.
happy to take that offline and chat more about it.
Thanks,
after the
Aaron.
call.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Oh, and sorry, you had your hand up before.
Yeah, just thought it'd be worth mentioning, particularly around the cold outbound mechanics. There's some pretty interesting tools that have improved this, but I think one of the mistakes I see people making, and I'm on the receiving end of this a lot, is that we think that we can use these tools to scale personalization, and what it ends up being is you get this email where it's almost like the old first name was like the personalization wave that we saw many years ago, and everyone thought it was amazing, and now they're using like company name and maybe there's some other stuff that's scraped off your website or off LinkedIn, and it's so bloody obvious that it's templated AI driven crap. There is a space though where you use tools like maybe it's Apollo or Clay or one of these kind of AI outbound sales tools that does really good data enrichment around prospects, and you add a step of a couple of minutes of research and then put together either a personalized video recording. The ones that have hit me the hardest and that we're playing with now are where you have clearly taken that extra step of a few minutes to personalize the message. And it also shows that you directly understand your ICP and the pain points and things like that. Now, it takes more time, but, it's better than getting a less than 1% open or response rate, and just reducing the total volume of outbound that you plan on doing. So I can report back, Aaron, in a month or so once we've implemented a bunch of these things and let you know how it's going.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And just like one liner that I like to remind people, especially whether it's cold outbound, warm outbound, or whatever, but people engage when they read or hear the words that resonate with their own story, like that, and that I think can be such a powerful frame of reference that if I'm going to go and do cold, warm, doesn't really matter. How do I know what this person's internal story is going to be that I can then resonate with it? Because your words don't matter, their words. And so often the prep work hasn't been done, to Owen's point, in order to do the outbound of any type that still conforms within that, I guess, framework.
We actually have a system already set up that we're using for this with connecting Apollo with NA10, Google News APIs, and our own internal system to automate this entire process. So yeah, if you want, happy to connect with you and discuss the NA10 setup that we have. I'm not sure if you played around with NA10. There's some things also we're doing with OpenClaw right now as well. So yeah, happy to discuss any of those.
That would be awesome. But the only thing is that you need to put that as a LinkedIn post, and then you have to force us all to comment agent, and that's the only way we can get access to it.
Yeah, it'll all be hidden behind an email wall.
Yeah, sweet. No, we'd really appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, happy to. Yeah, there's a lot of things like we can have a chat about a lot of the stuff that we're working on because yeah, I think it'll all be relevant for some discussion. So, but we can save that for no.
Thank you, buddy.
I'm conscious of time. I'm happy to stay on for a little bit, but I appreciate we are pretty much bang on the 90 minutes. I will share the recording afterwards. So if you did have to, I noticed a number of you jumped in and out at different points. I'll share those slides. We'll also share the links as promised to the different blog posts and books that we referenced, also to Marin's program. And also for any of you that would like to do more of this stuff, obviously this was 90 minutes, very rushed. This is exactly the type of stuff we do over 3 days at our growth summit. So check that out. It's up on the website. Or if you want to spend a whole week in market doing all of this in the context of entering the UK or North America, you can also jump on one of our market expansion missions. And the obvious plug is if you're raising capital post-seed to Series A in your B2B, we'd love to have a convo. And if you're looking to deploy capital into companies like that, we'd even more love to have a convo. So thanks everyone for giving up your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you who lent in as well. Thanks, Mark, for dropping all those things in the chat. That was really appreciated, buddy.
Thank you, Z.
Awesome. Happy to stay on for a bit, but otherwise enjoy the rest of your day.
No worries. Thanks all. Speak to you later.
Thanks.
Thank you.